Hola, welcome to our lesson on 6.2 Indirect Object Pronouns. We'll begin on page 202 in your textbook, and I will walk you through the explanation all the way to including some practice. Okay, this can be a lengthy topic, but really success on indirect object pronouns depends on how much you remember about direct object pronouns because it's the second level to that. There's mention here that in lesson 5 you learned about direct object pronouns. So let me go back and reference that to you. Lesson 5 that you do have access to. In 5.4, the absolute last lesson that we covered in our Spanish 101 course was about direct objects and those pronouns. So just to review this with you briefly, we typically have the structure of subject, verb, object. In Spanish, this is more flexible, and in questions, definitely the subject moves around a lot more. However, we still have these elements even if they're not explicitly stated. For example, here we see that Juan Carlos y Jimela is my subject. They do the action. They are taking the photos. Están tomando las fotos. Now, the object is the photos. It's what they are taking. I always advise my students, first locate your verb. Let's find another example. Mira, espero, different verbs. Hace, compra, tiene. Okay, this is a good way for us to look at it even down here. When you find your verb, ask the verb what or who. Maribel, Felipe, Vicky, they're subjects. They are the ones doing the actions. Maribel hace, what is she making or doing? Las maletas. That's my direct object. Felipe compra. ¿Qué compra? What is Felipe buying? El sombrero. And Vicky tiene. What does Vicky have? La llave. Once you locate your direct object, you can proceed to replace that direct object with a pronoun in a follow-up sentence. But my goal here was just to review what's a direct object. So it's the thing that is directly impacted by the verb. I eat pizza, pizza is my direct object. I watch TV, TV is what I watch. I call my mom is who I call. So your direct object can be a noun, it's a noun, but it can be a person or it can be a thing. With that being said, let's go back to where we were in chapter 6 on indirect object pronouns. We just have extra elements now. We still have subjects, verbs, direct objects, but now there's a recipient. That's the key word here. An indirect object is most easily defined just to get us started as a recipient. The indirect object receives the action of the verb indirectly. So we have the sentences saying like, Roberto lends money. What does he lend? Money. Great, that's my direct object. But to who? So this question isn't who or what. No, it's to whom or for whom. Think of it again like a recipient. ¿A quién le presta dinero? Not every verb has a direct object, and surely not every verb has an indirect object. We're going to see two verbs in I'm going to show you now that are really common with direct objects and indirect, especially getting to the layer of indirect. The verb dar is to give. So think about it. Yo doy algo a alguien. I give something to someone. You give something to someone. He, she, or you in the formal sense, da, which is gives to someone. Also, the verb decir is to say. So you say or tell something, that's a direct object, but to someone. I say hello to my students. I say hello to my husband. So these are verbs that are commonly used with indirect objects. To give you an example, let's read the examples below. Me dan una fiesta. There's no explicitly stated subject that is they. We could have said ellos, it could have been ellas, but we understand that the verb is in that third person singular, like here, dan or dicen. That third person is ustedes, ellos, or ellas. So ellos dan una fiesta, but to who? Me. Voy a darle consejos. I'm going to give advice. But to who? Le, we're going to see can mean to him, her, or you in a formal way. Don't worry, we'll get there. But I'm showing you the different elements. Te digo la verdad. I say or tell the truth, but to who? To you, te digo. No les digo mentiras a mis padres. I don't say, no digo, I don't say lies, but to who? So I wanted to keep emphasizing what is the indirect object before we get into the different types. I wanted you to see it in action. So now with that being said, these are the options. Me, te, le, nos, os, les. So the me is like a to or for me. Te is a to or for you. Le can mean to or for you if you're using the person as usted. If you're referring to someone in a formal way as usted, then you can use le. Le can also mean to or for him or her. So there's no gender on the le. We have nos is to or for us. Os we're really not going to use much if we don't use vosotros. So it's more here as a reference, but we're not going to use it. And les is either a ellos, a ellas, a ustedes. That's a Spanish version of what we're saying is to you as a group, to all of you, to them, which is a form of ellos or ellas in Spanish. So I'll give you a few examples of just giving money to people. Me da el dinero a mí. Like, él me da el dinero a mí. He gives the money to me. Te doy el dinero a ti. I give the money to you. Yo le doy el dinero a ella. I give the money to her. Yo le doy el dinero a él. I give the money to him. Ellos nos dan el dinero. They give the money to us. I can make many sentences, but just giving you one. Yo les doy el examen a mis estudiantes. So those are the type of sentences that, again, our 4 elements. We have, well, you can call it 5, but let's see. We have our subject and verb, that's 2. Then we have a direct object. You're not going to have an indirect object without having a direct object. So we have 1, 2, 3. Now my indirect object, this is something I have not explained yet. Unlike the direct object, the indirect object can and often coexist with its pronoun in the same sentence. We haven't really seen this where we would use a pronoun like ella in place of Maria and use them both at the same time. But in this case, because your indirect objects can be quite general, like when you say le, who is that for? We often mention the actual indirect object, the full phrase of the indirect object, not just the pronoun. We mention it together. So when I say Roberto le presta 100 pesos, I could stop the sentence there, but it's not clear. So I clarify, a Luisa. I could clarify and say a ella. Now, maybe this money was given to Juan. I would say Roberto le presta 100 pesos a Juan. Maybe this money was lent to a group of people. Roberto les presta 100 pesos a ellos. So I wanted you to see how the pronoun changes depending on your indirect object. I mentioned this, but to give more examples that you can use them together, ella le vende la ropa a Elena. The le is the pronoun, but the clarification is a Elena. The subject, she. Verb, sells. What? Sells what? The clothes. That's my direct object. To who? A Elena. But it's incorrect to just say a Elena. I need the pronoun. You could actually leave off the indirect object, but you have to have the pronoun. You have the option to include the indirect object to emphasize or clarify. Let's look at some more examples. Les prestamos el dinero a Inés y a Alex. Let's find my subject-verb combo first. Prestamos. So that's we lend. What do we lend? El dinero. That's my direct object. Who do we lend money to? To Inés y Alex. So the pronoun that matches Inés and Alex is like saying to them is les. Les is the correct pronoun that needs to be here, but Inés y Alex help clarify that. Ana le presta la falda a Elena. Ana is my subject. Presta is my verb. Ana presta. What does she lend? La falda. Okay, great. That's my direct object. To who? And I know I keep saying to who and it's to whom. Forgive my poor English. So, to whom? A Elena. So, therefore, I need le. Ana le presta la falda. But that's not very clear, so I'm going to clarify. A Elena. También le presta unos jeans. Here, you're seeing that I'm not repeating a Elena because at this point, it's known. We know it's Elena because I'm following up with that statement. So the le needs to be there every time I'm implying that there is an indirect object, but I don't need the whole phrase every time. Let's continue on and then we'll get to practice where we can talk about this some more. Indirect object pronouns are usually placed before the conjugated verb. This is something we did do before with chapter 5, direct object. You put it right before the verb. Martín me compra un regalo. Eva no me escribe. So even if there's a no, you can't split up the pronoun and the verb. So you have to keep that pronoun right before your conjugated verb. You can, however, attach these pronouns to infinitives. You have the option to attach it to an infinitive or continue to leave it before the conjugated verb. These both mean the same thing. Él no quiere pagarte, él no te quiere pagar. There's really no preference here. They mean the same thing. Sometimes I'll say it like the first version, sometimes I'll say it like the second, and no real difference. You can also attach indirect object pronouns, like, the ones we're talking about, me, te, le, nos, and les. You can attach them to participles. Oh man, if you're like, what is this? This tense, está escribiendo, it was attached to escribiendo, which gives us escribiéndole. It does now have an accent mark, and you count back uno, dos, tres. Boom, there it goes. It will always, when you only attach one pronoun, count backwards uno, dos, tres, and that's going to be the vowel that it lands on. Now, this is an option, but I want you to get used to seeing this. You can still keep the pronoun, though, before the conjugated verb. If you're not familiar with this tense, it comes from chapter 5. 5.2 will give you more information about present progressive and these participles like pescando y comiendo. So I just figured I highlight, because you don't necessarily know exactly where this information might be. So that's where I want to help and give you that. So what do we do next? Let's make sure that we have all the information down before we practice. Because the indirect object le and les have multiple meanings, we've been mentioning how we will clarify with the whole indirect object. Yo le compro un abrigo, not too clear. Yo le compro un abrigo a usted, better. A él, better. A ella, better. Ella le describe un libro. Ella le describe un libro a Juan. Now, again, for probably about the third time I mentioned this, you need to have the pronoun, but the phrase that is the indirect object is optional. It's good to have, though. And when we practice, we're going to see sentences with them. For example, we saw these verbs dar and decir used in examples without those phrases, but you didn't have to decide the answers. We had the whole phrase on this fourth one where it says a mis padres, but in this next activity, you're given the indirect object in parentheses here in English. So you have to decide if it's to Elena. In Spanish, what pronoun matches? So go back to your chart and make sure that you can reference, if it's to Elena, that's the same as saying to her. Therefore, my indirect object pronoun is le. That's how we found that answer. Let's do one more like that. If it's for us, remember, it can be to or for. I'm going to go back to my chart. If Maria prepares a coffee for us, whether it's to us or for us, that's going to be the pronoun nos. So that's how you can go ahead and begin working through your chart. So I'm going to give you a moment to click pause and try this activity. I'm going to proceed to go over the answers with you, but that's why you have to try. If you don't try, you don't know if you can. The whole nature of this activity is called inténtalo. That means try it. Inténtalo. That's a direct object pronoun. Inténtalo. Try it. Okay, so we had le in the example. Juan le quiere dar un regalo. María nos prepara un café because it said for us. I'm going to go over the next, so you can go ahead and try it. Pause. Beatriz y Felipe escriben. So they write, but they write to me. Me escriben. Los vendedores venden ropa. They sell clothes to who? To you. Well, what kind of you is this? This you is familiar and it's singular. So singular would be between tú and usted. And since this is familiar, that's definitely tú. Te venden ropa. Marta y yo compramos unos guantes. Marta and I buy some gloves. For who? For them. So if it's for them, we're going to say that's les. Compramos. And la dependienta muestra los guantes to us. So then ella, la dependienta, I said ella, replacing her, but la dependienta nos muestra los guantes. Okay, and this is good for you to, again, try it again at some time if you're not so sure, and then go over this section of the video again. Now, we saw it with examples in English saying to me, to you, but they're not always going to be like that. Therefore, I want to try this first activity on 204, where the full sentences are in Spanish. We just need to insert the correct pronoun. And if you can do this activity, I believe that for the most part, you received the lesson. Now, writing these statements, saying these statements, that's where the additional practice in VHL comes into play. But let's go ahead and first, I'm going to give you a few hints. Before you want to try. Again, let's talk about some structure. Juan y yo is my subject. That's my verb, damos. Juan y yo damos. What do we give? Una blusa. That's my direct object. Who do we give this blusa to? To whom? A nuestra hermana Gisela. So once you find your indirect object, which is always going to be introduced by an a, your indirect object, then we can go ahead and find the pronoun to match. So a nuestra hermana means to our sister. To our sister is equivalent to her. Therefore, it's le. Le damos una blusa a nuestra hermana. It's not to us. That's not nosotros. That's to our sister. So her sister equals her. Le. I'm going to go over one more like this with you, and then I'll let you pause, and I'll go over the answers. This is the last one we're going to do together. Mi tía is my subject. Mi tía da. What does she give? She gives, not us, no. She gives a table for the house to us. So she gives a table to whom? To us. So therefore it's nos. I suggest that you work your way through the sentences like I have, making sure you understand who's your subject. If it's written, sometimes it's not written. Like if it says hablo and it doesn't say yo hablo, yo isn't explicitly stated, but we know it exists because of hablo. So we know the subject would be yo. But in this case, you do have written subjects and you do have the verb stated right after the pronoun. You need to find your direct object first, like we found una blusa, una mesa, and then finally ask yourself to whom will give you the indirect object. And that's where you find the matching pronoun. I know there's a lot of steps to this, but that's why I'm walking you through. So pause, try, and then I'm going to go over the answers. Okay, no time lapse here. I'm jumping right in. Mis padres me dan un traje nuevo a mí. Mi mamá y yo. Oh, sorry. See, I misread because I said me. No. It's a mi mamá. A mi mamá is my indirect object because of the a. A mi mamá, yo doy. I give a pair of black gloves to my mom. Le. That is showing you that your indirect object isn't always in the front. Your subject is still here. But this is actually your indirect object, a mi mamá. Okay. A mi profesora. So to my professor, I give 2 libros. I don't know what language I'm speaking. 2 books of Jose Marti. So I'm the giver. I give 2 books. To whom? To my professor. Le. My professor is like saying to him or to her. Juan gives a gift to my parents. Les da un regalo a mis padres. Gisela da 2 corbatas a su novio. Le da 2 corbatas a su novio. Y a ti. Now to you, I give a gift also. A ti, yo, te. Now you're like, where did you get the te? A ti matches te. Just like a mí matches me. Okay, and once again, this isn't your only tutorial. This is just me walking you through some of this, but as a follow-up, you will have, and there you go. You can pause that and look with more detail if you want. You do have in your textbook the what we would call, let's say, official tutorial, but I always like to walk you through these topics myself. So don't forget to work on that and the practice activities. So muchas gracias por ver el video. Chao.